So it looks like the specs for the NVIDIA RTX 5080 and the 5090 are starting to be leaked. Pretty incredible, especially the 5090. We're going to talk about that a little later in the video because the 5080 kind of builds up to that. And the main competitor for the 5080 that people want to, check against is the existing RTX 4090, which has become a little bit more scarce lately and harder to find. So first, what are these leaked rumors for the 5080? How does it differ from the 4080? And how does it compare to the 4090? That's what people really want to know. So the 5080, and we don't know pricing yet, we're going to speculate on it soon, but the 5080 should be coming with 16 gigabytes of VRAM, the same as the 4080. The key difference, it's going to be GDDR7, which is going to be more efficient, it's going to be faster, so you have an idea. The specs, roughly, let's say for a 5080, it's still going to be 256-bit, just like the 4080 was, or 4080 Super, but the memory speed should be considerably faster. You're going to have a nice little jump in sort of the memory speed, which will help with, various things, especially things that are non-gaming, so to speak, maybe like machine learning and content creation, things like that. But the 5080 looks like the power draw is going to be around 400 watts, give or take. So that's going to be a pretty big jump from the 320 watts that we saw with the 4080, but it's still under the 450 watt TDP of the RTX 4090. Before we thought, where would the 4080 come out performance-wise versus the 4090? And now let's hear a word from our sponsor, VIP-CDKdeals.com, a Windows Pro CD key. Add to cart, you put in code CC20. This will also work on Windows 11. You want to go into your settings in Windows, change and adjust your CD key, click activate, and now let's go back to the video. In terms of memory, you could argue the 4090 is still going to be superior somewhat because it's 24 gigabytes of memory. It still has more bandwidth, even though it is on the older GDDR6X and not on the new 7 variety. So it's just not going to be as efficient and quite as speedy in some cases, but overall it still has more bandwidth and it's still kind of superior in a way, especially if you're using it for like 3D work or machine learning or like non-gaming purposes. But the 5080 clearly is a gaming GPU. It's one that NVIDIA points towards gamers, unlike the 90 series GPUs. So having better VRAM is going to be something that is just going to be better for games, and you don't necessarily need more than 16 gigabytes of VRAM for every game, and if you do and you're playing 4K, that's what the 5090 is going to be for. So at that speed, the memory looks very similar, and let's say if performance leaks say that this GPU may be somewhere in the neighborhood of 10% better than the 4090, I think that's going to be acceptable. If the memory is a little bit less, but gaming performance is on par with a 4090, it's drawing less power, that's not going to be too bad. Now, the kicker here is going to be the price. The 4080 Super is $999, which is down from the $1,199 of the original 4080. What's NVIDIA going to do? Kind of leave the same price as $999 for a 5080? That would definitely make it a decent GPU for the specs if it's faster than the 4090. I think a lot of people will be okay with that being $999. Or could NVIDIA potentially shoot the price right back up to $1,199? Maybe they figure there's still going to be 4080s out in the wild for a while, even though the 4090 seems to be sort of discontinued. The 4080 Super is still, not that old of a GPU. It's less than 1 year old at this point. So maybe NVIDIA wouldn't want to sort of cannibalize the sales of that GPU by making a 5080, which would have, a new architecture in Blackwell. It's just going to be a much faster GPU in general. So they can probably justify it going up to the higher price. And then that brings us to the 5090. The 5090 looks absolutely insane. 32 gigabytes of VRAM, considerably more than we saw on the 4090 or any gaming GPU. This appears to me to be a workstation GPU. That's what 32 gigabytes of VRAM usually gets you. Like in the Radeon Pro GPUs, for example, the W6800X Duo, that has 32 gigabytes of VRAM per GPU. So that to me seems like a workstation number, not gaming, because nobody's using 32 32 gigabytes of VRAM for gaming purposes. Obviously, it's going to have a massive, memory bandwidth and memory bit bus. It's going to have a 512 memory bit bus, which is like insane. And it's, look at the 5080, probably 256. And even the 4090 was only 384. So you're talking about lots of bandwidth. The memory bandwidth is going to be insane. GDDR7. So if you have something that takes advantage of VRAM, the 5090 is going to be an absolute monster. Gaming does, don't get me wrong. You need good and fast VRAM and a lot of it for ray tracing, high textures, high resolutions, but not this much. So that tells me that this is kind of like a hybrid workstation and maybe a little bit gaming GPU. It's always been like the 4090 certainly is also a hybrid GPU like that, since NVIDIA hasn't released like a Titan level GPU. But the 5090, especially considering what's going on with AI and everything like that, seems to be even more going in that direction. It just does. That's like a massive, massive, workstation class GPU. And then, I mean, some of the numbers for performance in gaming said it could be maybe 50 to 70% faster than the RTX 4090. Now that's very, very impressive. They did say, however, it could potentially come in at 600 watts. That's going to be one of the most power-hungry gaming GPUs, the most power-hungry gaming GPU we've ever seen, kind of like stock from the factory. I don't know if it's going to necessarily be that high with the power adapters and everything like that, but that's the stipulation of where it may be. Maybe it could be a little lower, like 500 watts, and some unlocked power limits could go up to 600. We don't know yet, but that's a lot of power, and that tells me it's going to be a very performant GPU. The price is where it's going to be another problem, just like the 5080. Is NVIDIA going to keep it at $1599 with these specs? I don't know. I mean, this is like a workstation GPU basically, and those GPUs go for a lot more money than $1599 generally. So if NVIDIA chooses to keep it at $1599, it's probably going to be sold out. You're going to have scalpers. You're going to have the same issues that you had before, because even though it is really expensive, gamers are going to want it. That's one group. You have like content creators and animators and 3D people are going to want it. That's going to be another group. Then obviously you have all the machine learning and AI. Even small companies will probably use this if they can't get the NVIDIA workstation GPUs, some of the more expensive ones, and they're just, they just want to test out and have like a smaller operation, just like they did with the 4090 pretty much all over the world. Even in China, they had to make a specific 4090D in order to, meet the requirements for GPUs in that region. So 1590, I don't think it's going to be cheap. 1599 would definitely be optimistic. It's possible NVIDIA could price it at like $1999 if they jump up the price of the 5080, because they know they're going to sell. They know they're going to sell a lot of these 1590s. Why are they going to price it lower? It's not only gamers going for this GPU, it's also going to be the, like I said, machine learning and everything that's going on in the AI wave right now. And the way they spec'd this 5090 out, you can tell that it's more than likely a workstation GPU. It definitely can do it. Look at these crazy memory specs. So we'll see what happens. The specs are impressive, very different than the 4090, a lot more powerful in many ways, but you may not even be able to use all that if you're not using it for content creation or machine learning or whatever. For just a gamer, a lot of that VRAM may kind of be wasted unless they come out with some type of DLSS or something that just eats up VRAM. I don't really see the utility as just a gaming GPU. So that points to the 5080 as the one most people want to watch out for. We'll see what happens. Remember to subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next video.